See. Okay, we got a few missing members. We know Shonda is going to be absent. Who else is missing?
Ramon is excused too.
Oh, he is? Oh, okay, that's right. Okay, so we can go ahead and get started then, okay? Well, thank you very much and good morning, everyone. And at this time, I'd like to call the Board of Administration meeting to order. And the first order of business is roll call. Mrs. Hopper, please. Mrs. Hopper. Something's wrong with her connection, Marcy.
Yes, Cherie, are you on, or Christina?
Yes, I'm here. I'll do roll call.
Okay, thank you, Cherie.
Henry Jones,
Here.
Teresa Taylor,
Here.
Margaret Brown,
Good morning.
Rob Beckner,
Good morning.
Frank Rufino for Fiona Ma,
Present.
Lisa Middleton,
Present.
David Miller,
Here.
Stacy Olivares,
Here.
Irene Ortega, Jason Perez,
Here.
Ramon Rubicava,
Excused.
Shonda Wesley,
Excused.
Betty Yee.
This is Lynn Pegwin for Betty Yee.
Okay, thanks, Lynn.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we now will move
David,
to the.
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now, Pam. Okay. We now will move on to the approval of the February 18, 2021 Board Administration timed agenda. Do we have a motion?
Move approval.
Moved by Ms. Brown, second by
Second.
Ms. Taylor. All those in favor say aye. Oh no, Ms. Hopper, please call the roll. So we did hear her.
Cherie, can you call roll?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm on now. Thank you. I apologize. I was having some technical issues.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, 1 second. Okay, roll call. Henry Jones,
Aye. Oh, I don't need to. Okay, but aye.
Margaret Brown.
We're approving the minutes, right? Aye.
Oh, okay, 1 second.
Thank you.
Rob Freckner,
Aye.
Frank Rufino for Fiona Ma,
Aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Stacy Olivares,
Aye.
Irene Ortega,
Arena's having internet problems this morning, so she's on the phone, not able to join. This is Nicole Griffith. I'm going to ask to be promoted to panelist to fill in for her for the time being.
okay, Nicole Griffith for the approval of the minutes.
Aye.
Jason Perez,
Aye.
Ramon Rubicava,
Excused.
Teresa Taylor,
Aye.
Shonda Wesley,
Excused.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, was Ramon Rubicava in?
No, he's excused.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. President, I have all ayes with Ramon Rubicava and Shonda Wessler being excused for the approval of the minutes.
Okay, thank you very much.
And
We
could
now,
I get who made the motion and seconded that?
it was made by Ms. Brown and seconded by Ms. Taylor.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we will move to the Pledge of Allegiance, and I've asked Mr. Perez to lead us in the pledge. Mr. Perez, please.
Morning, please stand, put your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. Well, it's now I'd like to make a few comments, but first I would like to begin by congratulating the newly elected chairs and vice chairs of our investment, finance and administration, risk, audit, and performance, compensation, and talent management committees. We appreciate your service in these roles, and we look forward to working with you throughout the year. I also want to acknowledge that February is Black History Month. It's an annual celebration of achievements by African Americans and a time for recognizing the central role of Blacks in U.S. history. This year's theme is the Black family, representation, identity, and diversity. No single word is more illustrative of our humanity or who we are than the word family. It stands at the heart of human relationships, representing the essence of ties that bind people together by blood, by race, by social affinity, by national heritage, and by religious convictions. The Black family theme offers a window into the African American experience over generations because family-oriented examples, stories, images, and concepts have long inspired and mobilized African Americans. This is especially true in light of the recent events that have exposed systematic racism and inequality. Celebrating the contributions of African Americans to the fabric of our state and country is more important than ever. So thank you for allowing me to make those comments, and now we'll turn it over to our Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Frost.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, President Jones. We also look forward to working with all of the committee chairs who were elected during our board meetings this week. February, certainly 1 year later, marks our 1 year since we learned about how serious COVID-19 spread was going to be. It's also had a very devastating impact on our economy. We've all been watching this quite closely over the last 12 months. And I would say heightened awareness of long-standing inequities that prevent people from reaching their full potential. For our part, CalPERS has a leadership role in really replaying or rewriting the story going forward. We believe that our leadership in the healthcare policy space or in purchasing space can have an impact on access to quality, affordable care. We're also investors who have a platform to advocate for policies and practices that are good for the fund, but also equally important, good for people impacted by capital investments around the globe. We also have partnerships in place to help bridge the gaps that COVID-19 has certainly exposed. First and foremost, we do have our mission to fulfill. We'll remain resilient, and I think we've been proving that over the last 12 months, and we'll also be adaptive to do what it takes to deliver on that mission of delivering service to our almost 2 million members, to protect our employees, to keep them safe, and ensuring access to healthcare for all of our members and their families. A year later, we continue to operate at around 95% remote. The team was working very well together. Our customer service performance is good, and the satisfaction rating from our customers remains high at just over 90%. Our benefit payments are being processed in a timely manner, meeting our target goal of 95%. We can always do better, though. That's certainly something that we look at. We don't rest on great performance or good performance. We do look for ways that we can continually improve. And one area we have been concentrating on more recently is in our customer contact center, where the call wait times have been sometimes higher than either we or our members would like. And especially, this is primarily occurring on Mondays when we typically do receive a higher call volume following the weekend. To address this particular issue, we are adjusting team member schedules and moving vacant positions from elsewhere in the organization to the call center to help stabilize wait times on a consistent basis. The strategy is proving successful. It will take us some time to get the new positions filled, but those processes are also underway. But wait times have been reduced by half over the last month, while service levels are continuing to improve. As part of the state's efforts also on COVID-19, the governor's office did reach out to us and requested the help of Marta Green, who is the chief of our health plan research and administrative division. Marta is now temporarily working with the government operations agency to help lead key parts of the state's COVID-19 vaccine distribution. I think the governor's office has been supportive and is appreciative that we're willing to loan her out. And, you know, to us who've seen her talent in the board meeting and certainly within CalPERS, we know that she's got the expertise to really help make this successful. In the meantime, as we enter into our rates process, Don Molds, will be working with his team to cover Marta's work on the health premium negotiations while she is away. Moving on now to some outreach efforts and events, many of them around our role in engaging on critically important topics like financial reporting on the impact of climate change and ensuring that we continue to work on building sustainable economies in which businesses around the world can thrive and where we can invest our capital appropriately. I really don't think the importance of our work in this particular area with other institutional investors. This is not something CalPERS can do on its own. Corporate executives, through engagement, discussions, through a number of alliances that we've formed on these really important matters, whether those are policymakers and regulators, I just don't think that can be overstated, the importance of this particular work. By coordinating our efforts with organizations like the United Nations and the Net Zero Asset Owner Alliance, Climate Action 100+, the continued success in that engagement, and series, we can more effectively advocate for the transparency and the regulatory changes we need to ensure that our portfolio companies are investing our capital appropriately in the transition to a more sustainable economy. This is why we generally do not believe divestment is an effective approach for CalPERS. We believe that our voice is critically important and that there may be opportunities for us to find investments in the transition to a more sustainable economy. On to the Stakeholder Forum. Finally, last month, we hosted our second annual Stakeholder Forum, which many of you were also able to attend. Like all of our meetings these days, it was a virtual event that hosted about 70 stakeholders, including active and retired members, as well as employer associations. The purpose of this meeting was to provide attendees with direct access to CalPERS, whether those are team leaders or whether those are board members, and have discussions with the key program areas about the topics that are most meaningful to these particular groups. In addition to those who actually participated in the virtual platform, there were another approximately 350 members of the public watching throughout the day via the board webcast. The feedback that we received from the event was very good overall, with more than 80% of the attendees indicating that the event was beneficial and that they would participate again. We do hope that next year we can do the Stakeholder Forum in person here at CalPERS, but I think that we have been able to really prove that if the case were to arise where we would be unable to provide that in person, we would certainly pivot back to the virtual platform. Just a quick March board meeting preview coming up. In those meetings, we'll spend time getting an update on our corporate governance activities and reviewing the investment portfolio and the asset allocation for our long-term care plan. We'll also get an overview of the open enrollment results and receive our annual diversity and inclusion report. And now, President Jones did recognize Black History Month, and I'd like to take a moment to talk about some of the activities that we are doing internally here at CalPERS, as well as celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Starting with Black History Month, we have put the spotlight on the observance by sharing curated resources on our internal employee website, highlighting this year's theme, and President Jones did indicate this as well, but the theme is Black family, representation, identity, and diversity, established by the Association of the Study of African American Life and History. And through other employee communications, we've shared ways for employees to participate in Black History Month activities by attending virtual events, and exploring museum exhibits online, such as the California Museum's tribute to Vice President Kamala Harris. 2021 also marks, again, the 30th anniversary of the Historic Americans with Disabilities Act, and we'll be holding a virtual panel discussion next week on February 25th that will feature notable disability rights activists and members of the Netflix documentary, Crip Camp, A Disability Revolution. The discussion will focus on the evolution of disability rights and is being organized by our CalPERS Disability Advisory Committee, Diversity and Inclusion Group, Diversity and Outreach Program, and the Accessibility Compliance Team. Speaking of our employee resource groups, I am happy to share that our CalPERS Disability Advisory Committee has been honored with the 2020 Disability Advisory Committee of the Year Award, given by the Association of California State Employees with Disabilities and the State Disability Advisory Committee. This all-volunteer committee has more than 200 members around CalPERS and conducts monthly meetings with an average attendance of about 70. They were recognized for their superior efforts to increase employment of persons with disabilities. And just would like to wish them a congratulations for receiving this honor. Now, as to investment performance, as a reminder, last month I did provide the 12.4 calendar year in performance as of December 31st, 2020. Our next update will include performance as of quarter end on March 31st, 2021. And that does conclude my report, President Jones, and I'll turn it back to you.
Henry, you're muted.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Thank you, Ms. Frost, for your report. And we do have a question for you from Ms. Brown. Ms. Brown.
Thank you. Ms. Frost, can you share with us of the approximate 2,800 employees we have, how many are social distancing or working from home, and then how many are coming to the office either part-time or full-time?
You bet. So we are tracking this as a part of our daily COVID-19 dashboard. We have approximately 100 employees who are coming into the office. The remainder, including the regional locations, are successfully remote working. And the 100 that are coming into the office, the majority of those are doing duties or performing duties that are unable to be performed in a remote environment. And that would be receiving mail as one example.
Probably maintenance as well. Okay. And then can we get, I mean, since there's only 100 people or so there, probably the issue that we've been reading in the press about the Legionnaires problem, it doesn't affect these, but could we just get an update from you on that?
Sorry. Yes, I think, I don't know if we could promote Doug or Dallas. I can certainly give you an update. But I think it might be better to get Doug or Dallas promoted as a panelist to come in.
That's great. And while we're waiting for them, when do we think we're going to meet in person?
As a board?
Yeah, well, yeah, as a board. And I know a lot of the stakeholders and retirees would like to come back. So when do we think? When are we estimating?
Right. So our current calculation, and again, this is working with public health officials, working with our internal Dr. Logan, we have essentially notified employees that we will be primarily working remote through June. At that point in time, we do have a return to the office plan that would start with the executives returning, as well as volunteers returning. So I would say beginning in July, that's the earliest that we would be able to host a board meeting on site. But the current plan for the July offsite, on-site, would be to do that in a virtual format.
Great, thank you.
And Ms. Frost, that's providing that there's no override from the governor's office of changes in returning to work, okay?
Correct. That's based on current guidance.
Right, okay.
All right. It looks like we have Mr. Hoffner.
Good morning, it's members of the board. Doug Hoffner, CalPERS team member. Regarding the physical property at the headquarters, we have hired a third-party industrial hygienist firm. We've been working with them for the last several weeks. We toured the property with this consultant. He provided some recommendations to us that we begin to implement. We've been working with the Department of Public Health and the chief Legionella expert in the state of California. We had that individual and one other doctor on our webcast with Marcy and Dallas Stone approximately a week ago to talk to the employees and help answer questions they had regarding what Legionella is and what it isn't. We've also been working with CalOSHA in terms of occupational health standards, in terms of the physical property, the janitorial teams, our union employees and management. So essentially, we've obviously conducted additional testing related to the property, and we've instituted some additional measures based upon the recommendations of the third-party hygienist. Those thoughts and recommendations have essentially suggested that we've done a good job in terms of the testing. We're one of the few institutions that actually test for Legionella as part of our LEED standards for the platinum and gold certifications for the physical property in the buildings. It's a naturally occurring bacteria that is found in lakes and streams and rivers. And so we've basically put in protocols to help mitigate that in terms of bacterial growth within the infrastructure of the organization. Additional testing will be ongoing. That's both potable and non-potable water throughout the facilities. We've also installed different filtration devices per the industrial hygienist and various points within the property.
I really appreciate that, all the testing that we're doing. As I think we discussed in another committee hearing, I talked about how I have done capital facilities for 3 decades, and we don't normally test the water for Legionellas. We test for lead and we test for other things, but not for that. So that was pretty amazing that we tested and found that. And more importantly, we don't think any employees were exposed or were ill. Is that correct? We don't have any ill employees as a result.
Correct, Mrs. Brown. No employee has tested positive for Legionella. Based on the discussion with the Legionella expert with public health, there's only 500 or 600 cases in the entire state of California with already 40 million residents. That is quite low. An outbreak would be multiple people with a testing for Legionella, which has not occurred. It typically is found, frankly, in places like hospitals, large hotels, cruise ships, and very complex facilities and infrastructure. And frankly, we've learned a lot about this in the fact that even many public health water systems don't test for it either. And so they test for, hundreds of other, chemicals and constituents, but that's not one of the ones that's even tested in the Sacramento region where we get our water supply. It is naturally occurring. So it's one of those things that, given the fact that we are one of the few that test for it, we're doing what we can to basically mitigate and eliminate that within the property, including extensive flushing programs, because now that we don't have employees on property at any given volume, basically we're not replicating, or we're trying to replicate what would have happened if everybody was using the facilities in a normal instance. And that's part of the protocol that's been recommended.
Great, I appreciate that, and especially the flushing. We have to do that at schools and other facilities where we might have, old pipes. You've got to flush it, let it run. So I really appreciate all the work we're doing to address what could have been a very serious issue. And I'm glad to hear that no employees or maybe other people who come and visit the facility or use the facility were exposed. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Henry, you're muted.
Thank you, Ms. Hopper. Thank you, Ms. Brown, and thank you, Mr. Hoffner. I see no additional requests to speak, have a question. So we move to agenda item 6, action consent, approval of the November 18, 2020 and December 15, 2020 Board of Administration meeting minutes, and there was no request for board travel. So do we have a motion?
Move approval.
Moved by Ms. Brown, second by Mr. Miller. Discussion, seeing none. Ms. Hopper, please call the roll.
Margaret Brown,
Aye.
Rob Fechner,
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma,
Aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Stacy Oliveris,
Aye.
Irena Ortega,
Excused.
Jason Perez,
Aye.
Ramon Rubacava,
Excused.
Teresa Taylor,
Aye.
Shonda Wesley,
Excused.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have Margaret Brown making the motion, David Miller seconding it for the approval of the November 18, 2020 and December 5th, 2020 Board of Administration meeting minutes.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hopper, did you call on Ms. Griffith, who is in for Ms. Ortega?
Well, I believe they have Irena on the phone.
Oh, she's on now?
She is, yes.
Oh, okay, okay, thank you.
And
And
I
I
am
believe-
here as well.
And I believe she indicated
Can you hear me?
aye for the meeting minutes.
Oh, okay, thanks, okay.
Yeah.
All
Yes,
right,
I can
thank
hear you, Irena.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving on to item 7 on the agenda, information consent item. I have no request to remove anything from that, so we will now go to agenda item 8, committee reports and actions. First one is investment committee, and I call on the chair, Mrs. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The investment committee met via video conference on February 16th, 2021. The committee held an election for chair and vice chair positions. Teresa Taylor was elected chair and David Miller was elected vice chair. Congratulations, David. The committee approved the following agenda item 6A, the recommendation to approve the investment committee delegation. The committee received reports on the following topics: an analysis of financial market and economic performance since September 2020, an overview of key concepts, milestones, and deliverables for the asset liability management process. And at this time, I'd like to share some highlights of what to expect in our March 2021 Investment Committee meeting, an overview of the asset allocation options for the long-term care fund, more information on the asset liability management process, timeline, the semi-annual trust level review conducted by staff and the board's investment consultants, and an update on corporate governance and a 5-year divestment review. The next meeting of the investment committee is scheduled for March 15th, 2021 via video conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. The next item is 8B, pension and health. There was no committee meeting, so we moved to 8C, finance and administration committee. For the report for that committee, I call on the chair, Mr. Miller.
Okay, thank you. I'm just in the process of trying to pull this back up because I just lost track of it on my computer. Hang on a sec. Okay, here we go. Okay, the Finance and Administration Committee met on February 17th, 2021. The committee held an election for the Finance and Administration Committee Chair and Vice Chair. David Miller was elected Chair and Teresa Taylor was elected Vice Chair. And so now I have some committee motions. And I guess I'll go through them one at a time. The committee recommends and I move the board approve the following. Agenda item 5B, approve the June 30th, 2020 Judges Retirement System Actuarial Valuation Report and the corresponding transmittal letter to the governor and legislature. Agenda item 5C, approve the June 30th, 2020 Retirement System 2 Actuarial Evaluation Report and the corresponding transmittal letter to the governor and legislature. Next is agenda item 5D, to approve the June 30th, 2020 Legislators Retirement System Actuarial Evaluation Report and the corresponding transmittal letter to the governor and the legislature. And item 7A, approve the initiation of the 2021 member-at-large election for the CalPERS Board of Administration by adopting the notice of election.
On the motion of the committee, Mrs. Hopper, please call the roll.
Okay, Mr. President, do we want to do these individual roles for each of these
No,
items?
unless someone asks that something be pulled out, we're taking the roll call on all of the items that Mr. Miller cited.
Okay, thank you. Margaret Brown,
Aye.
Rob Fechner,
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma,
Aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Stacy Oliveris,
Aye.
Nicole Griffith for Irena Ortega,
Aye.
Jason Perez,
Aye.
Ramon Rubacava,
Excused?
Teresa Taylor,
Aye.
Shonda Wesley,
Excused?
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have all ayes. Motion made by David Miller for items 5B, 5C, 5D, and I believe 7A.
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hopper. Okay, continue on, Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee reviewed the FAC delegation and has no recommended changes. The delegation will be presented for board approval along with other committee delegations at a subsequent meeting. In addition, the committee reviewed a report on the pension contract management program. The chair directed staff to provide additional information on December 2020 actual versus estimated non-investment and investment cash flows in the liquidity and status report, along with historical December trends, and to present research if members are able to nominate a candidate if they don't have a social security number. At this time, I would like to share some highlights of what to expect at the April Finance and Administration Committee meeting. The 2021 through 2022 annual budget proposal, annual review of board member employer reimbursements, state valuation and employer-employee contribution rates, and the school's valuation and employer-employee contribution rates. The next meeting of the Finance and Administration Committee is scheduled for April 19th, 2021. And that concludes my report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. The next item on the agenda is the Performance, Compensation, and Talent Management Committee. For that report, I call on the chair, Mr. Fechner.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Performance, Compensation, and Talent Management Committee met on February 17, 2021. The committee held an election of the Performance, Compensation, and Talent Management Committee chair and vice chair. Rob Fechner was elected chair, and Irena Ortega was elected vice chair. The committee recommends that I move the board approve the following. Agenda item 8A, approve the fiscal year 2020-2021 semi-annual status report of the Chief Executive Officer.
On the motion of the committee, Ms. Hopper, please.
Margaret Brown,
I had a question on perf and comp.
On this particular item that we're voting on now, or is it something else?
On 6B,
Okay, well, this action is just on 6A right now.
okay, all right, thank you. Aye.
Okay.
Rob
Continue, Ms.
Fechner,
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma,
Aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Stacy Oliveris,
Aye.
Arena Ortega,
Aye.
Jason Perez,
Aye.
Ramon Rubacava,
Excused.
Teresa Taylor,
Aye.
Shonda Wesley,
Excused.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have the motion being made by Rob Fechner on agenda item 8A, the semi-annual status report on incentive plan of the CEO.
Okay. And Ms. Brown, you mentioned that you have a question on item 6B. Mr. Factor, do you have updated information on that before the question?
I do. It'll be in my report.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and make your report first, and then we'll see if Ms. Brown continues to have a question.
Thank you. The chair directed staff to provide additional information regarding the authority under which the current Chief Investment Officer interview subcommittee is working. Request the board's executive and investment compensation consultant, Global Governance Advisors, to review and provide recommendations regarding the mix of base salary and incentive opportunity for the Chief Executive Officer position, including de-emphasizing incentive compensation and recommendations for improvements to the process. The committee also reviewed the PCTN delegation. The committee's proposed changes to the delegation will be presented for board approval along with the other committee's delegations at a subsequent meeting. At this time, I would like to share some highlights of what to expect at the next Performance Compensation Talent Management Committee meeting. The committee will receive a report on the annual review of incentive metrics for fiscal year 2021-22 and information on adding long-term incentive to the Chief Investment Officer compensation package. The next meeting of the Performance Compensation and Talent Management Committee will be scheduled for April 19, virtually via Zoom. That ends my report. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Factor. Ms. Brown, do you have a question?
Yes, still. I know we're going to be bringing back, I guess, this delegation of authority, but I just want to be sure I understand. So with this delegation of authority, the board is delegating to Perf and Comp the shared responsibility of hiring the CIO. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. So the subcommittees that currently exist include Mr. Miller, who's not on Perf and Comp. So I don't exactly know. I don't know what shared responsibility means. Like what exactly does that mean? And then if it goes to Perf and Comp, that's 7 members. Are we going to have a Bagley-Keene problem when it comes to hiring the CIO or interviews of the full committee, or will it be a subcommittee of Perf and Comp? And the only reason I'm asking is Mr. Miller is not on that committee. So I'm concerned that it's going to change the way we're currently doing things, which I approve of. But I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention that it's a little confusing.
Okay, Mr. Fechner?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Maybe Mr. Jacobs can come on and clarify, but my understanding is that this delegation will take action after this process, not during the current CIO process. This delegation is for future. It's not acting upon now, but Mr. Jacobs should be able to clarify for us.
Yes, good morning, board members. That is exactly right. We didn't have this policy in language until yesterday, and it's actually not even in language approved by the board until it comes forward to the board with all of the rest of the committee delegations, which will happen most likely in April. And so what Mr. Jones has done to date is essentially tried to effectuate the board's direction from the governance committee meeting last November by establishing the 2 subcommittees and setting up the policy or the procedure that he did. But going forward, we will be under the new PCTM. Once the board, if and when the board approves the new delegation, we'll be under that procedure, and it will be a subcommittee of PCTM or something else that the board decides collectively at that time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, hopefully we'll be done with the hiring process by April, but if not, we might want to be concerned about when we take effect. So I wouldn't want to switch it up in the middle since the subcommittees have, a lot of experience going back to November. So it would be, I think, problematic if we switch it in the middle. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Ms. Ortega?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Notwithstanding that the policy is prospective, I think Ms. Brown raises some interesting questions about the Bagley-Keene kind of, are we creating meetings? I think it would be worth looking at how we handled the current process and how that delegation would work in a hypothetical future process. I'm just thinking now, I'm a little concerned that we haven't thought through the potential practical problems with the delegation. So I just think it should be something that everybody takes a look at before we get locked into this is the future process. Just not clear how it would work. If we think that the process we're using now makes some sense, I'm not sure it would work under the way the delegation is drafted. So just something to consider so we're not caught, locked into something in some sort of future scenario.
Sure. If I may address Bagley-Keene, there isn't a Bagley-Keene issue with respect to the way we're doing it now because these committees have been created and all the meetings have been publicly noticed and will continue to be publicly noticed. But I get your point on the other thing, and that's really for the board to decide how and when it would want to take that up. We could do it in governance committee or some other locale, but I leave that to the board's discussion and discretion.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Jacob. Yeah, Ms. Ortega, I think that's an appropriate discussion when this item comes back. And all of these delegations will come to the governance committee, Mr. Jacobs?
No, they come to the full board. We collect all delegations from the various committees, except of course the investment committee, because it has now resumed its status as committee of the whole, so its action is final. But the rest of them come together in a package, typically in April, if we've got them all done by then, which we should. And they come directly to the board for discussion and approval or not.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Ortega, that will be an opportunity time to voice your views and, whatever comes out of the full board meeting, that would give us direction going forward. Okay, you're muted, Ms. Ortega. I couldn't hear you. You're muted.
I didn't have anything else to say. I'll wait. For me, it's just a caution that I'm just concerned about locking in language in the delegation that then doesn't give us flexibility should we have a need to create a future committee process. That's what I'm raising. So I'm just wanting everyone to think through how this new proposal would work. That's all.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Brown?
Yes, thank you.
I actually had my hand up first.
Your hand is up. Ms. Brown is in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. President Jones. The concern I have is that we're delegating it to PCTM as opposed to keeping it with the full board or delegating it to the investment committee, which would give us lots of flexibility, or just keeping it with the board. I have a concern that it could limit our ability to what we want to do. And I think we should really seriously take another look at that. Thank you.
Okay, you have an opportunity to discuss, share your views, okay, when it comes to us. Ms. Taylor.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Mr. Jacobs if, I guess on the same level that Ms. Ortega and Ms. Brown are talking, if we can, if this is we're already at kind of a final almost delegation point. We started this in governance. At the point we're ready to vote on this, can we send this back to someplace else if we choose to?
Yes.
Okay, so if the committee itself decides to send it back as a whole board initiative and or governance committee initiative, we can do that.
Sure.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, see no additional questions on that item. So, Mr. Fechner, were you finished? Yeah, I guess you were, right? Okay, thank you. Okay, now we move to the next report, Risk and Audit Committee. Ms. Milton, the chair of that committee, I'll call on you for the report. And we do have, before we vote on anything, if it's a voting item there, we do have a request to speak on this item from the public. So, Ms. Milton, please proceed.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. The Risk and Audit Committee met on February 17, 2021. The committee held an election for the Risk and Audit Committee Chair and Vice Chair. Lisa Middleton was elected Chair and David Miller was elected Vice Chair of the committee. The committee reviewed the Risk and Audit Committee delegation and has no recommended changes. The delegation will be presented for board approval along with other committee delegations at a subsequent meeting. The committee received reports on the following topics: the 2021 mid-year plans for enterprise compliance and enterprise risk management, and third-party actuarial review report for the period March 1, 2016 through October 31, 2020. The chair directed that the calendar for the upcoming RFP for the third-party actuarial firm be distributed to the committee. At this time, I would like to share some of the highlights of what to expect at the February Risk and Audit Committee meeting. The 2021-22 plans for the enterprise compliance and enterprise risk management, and the revised audit resolution policy. The next meeting of the Risk and Audit Committee is scheduled for April 19, 2021 in Sacramento, California, or virtually.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Milton, for your report. We now will hear from the public. Mr. Fox.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have one caller for public comment, Mr. J.J. Jelensik on item 8E as in Edward.
Okay.
I guess I've now been unmuted. This is J.J. Jelensik, beneficiary, speaking for myself. I want to thank you for having BDO come in and address the previously undisclosed closing period adjustment related to real estate. However, it appears the BDO was not asked to address the issue I had raised. At the Risk and Audit Committee in November, the auditor disclosed a $582.9 million prior period adjustment. Statement number 62 of the Governmental Accounting Standards Board in paragraph 62 says, quote, when prior period adjustments are recorded, the resulting effects on the change in the net assets of the prior period should be disclosed in the notes to the financial statement in the period in which the adjustment was made, end quote. I again note that no such disclosure was made. It is not a question of restating the prior period, the prior financial statements. BDO is right. The misstatement was not significant enough to require a full restatement. However, the prior period adjustment must be noted in the footnote, and it wasn't. While I have the floor, I'll take just a brief minute. I have criticized Kim Mom in the past when I thought it was due, but I want to take this case to thank her for the help she has been giving me on dealing with some long-term care issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jelensik. Mr. Coyne, if you would just review those comments and determine whether or not it's necessary to provide any additional information. Okay, well, thank you. We now go to 8F, Board Governance. There was no meeting, so we would now move to item 9, proposed decisions of administrative law judges. And we have Mr. Sharad Shah on the phone. Is he on the phone? Or in the queue?
Yeah, Sharad is coming on the panelist now.
And that's the board's independent board counsel on the administrative law judge decisions. So, you there, Sharad?
Yes, Mr. President, good morning.
Okay, good morning, thank you. Okay, so with this proposed decisions, action item number 9, I call on the Vice President, Ms. Taylor.
Okay, and it looks like Mr. Miller has a question on 9A25. Do you want me to pull that out before I do the motion?
Yes, please. 9825.
Right.
Okay.
I move to adopt the proposed decision at agenda items 9A1 through 9A24 and 9A26 through 34 as the board's own decisions with the minor modifications argued by staff to agenda items 9A7, 10, 12 through 16, 21 through 29, save 25, 31, and 34.
Okay, on the
Approval?
Second.
move by Mrs. Taylor and second by, who's that? Mr. Fechner? Okay, so
Ms. Brown moved.
Oh, Ms. Brown moved? Well, Ms. Taylor moved because she.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so next time, Ms. Brown. Okay, so it's been moved by Ms. Taylor and second by Mr. Fechner. And so we, Mrs. Hopper, please call the roll.
Margaret Brown,
Aye.
Rob Fechner,
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma,
Aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Stacy Oliveris,
Aye.
Irena Ortega,
Aye.
Jason Perez,
Aye.
Ramon Mubakava,
Excused.
Teresa Taylor,
Aye.
Shonda Wesley,
Excused.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have the motion being made by Teresa Taylor, seconded by Rob Fechner. All ayes.
Thank you very much. Now we will go to Mr. Miller's question on 9825. Mr. Miller.
Yeah, on 98025, case of respondent Martinez, I have some concern and I'm a little confused, but it seems that the decision to deny was based on an independent medical examination or opining that respondent Martinez problems would go away in 12 months, which would then make them not qualified to get this with some simple exercises. And that was the basis of the primary basis of us denying it, that it wasn't a permanent situation. It seems, and maybe I misread, but looking at it, that that really wasn't the case, that the problem persisted. And in fact, respondent Martinez needed further surgery, but that evidence apparently was not brought forth in another hearing because respondent Martinez did not participate. So I just want to make sure I've got that all clear, because that really concerns me that this person may well deserve to have that. And so that's what I would, that's my concern and why I'm not inclined to accept the judge's decision.
Mr. Shar, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I read the proposed decision, and to me, it seemed like it was consistent with the law and this issue of whether a member was permanently disabled. However, the board does have the option of remanding the proposed decision. Mr. Miller, if he wishes, can present that motion to the board to take additional evidence regarding whether a member had in fact, a permanent disability as required by the PERL. So that is certainly an option that is available to the board.
Yeah, I would make that motion.
Okay, it was moved by Mr. Miller to remand 9A25 for the
I'll
taking of
second.
additional information, and it's second by Mrs. Brown. Ms. Hopper, further discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Hopper, please take the roll.
Margaret Brown,
Aye.
Rob Fechner,
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma,
Aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Stacy Oliveris,
Aye.
Irena Ortega,
Aye.
Jason Perez,
Aye.
Ramon Rubacava,
Excused?
Teresa Taylor,
Aye.
Shonda Wesley,
Excused?
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have all ayes. Motion made by David Miller, seconded by Margaret Brown for agenda item 9A25.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you, Ms.
all.
Hopper. Okay, thank you. Okay, now we will move on to the next item on the agenda, the information agenda items. 10A, state and federal legislation update. Mr. Brown.
Good morning, Mr. President and board members. Before I get started, can I ask that the K&L team get promoted? That's Dan Crowley and Karishma Page and Bill Kirk. All right. I see that they are starting to come on. So I'm going to start with the state side. And since our last board meeting, the legislature has reconvened and has organized itself for the new session. In the retirement policy space, both the Senate and the Assembly have named new chairs. Senator Dave Cortese is the chair of the Senate Labor, Public Employment and Retirement Committee, replacing Senator Jerry Hill, who termed out. On the Assembly side, Assemblymember Jim Cooper is the chair of the Public Employment and Retirement Committee, replacing Mr. Rodriguez. The chairs of both the health committees remain the same, Senator Pan and Assemblymember Wood. In addition, the legislature has been introducing new bills for the new legislative session. The deadline for new bills is this Friday. And because of our agenda deadlines, you probably noticed that there were no bills listed in our agenda item this month. But there are a few bills that I would like to mention that have come on since that report went out. First, Chairman Cooper has authored and introduced the board-sponsored private debt records disclosure bill. It is AB 387. We're also working with committee staff to have our other two board-sponsored provisions added to the retirement policy omnibus bill. Senator Leyva has introduced SB 278, which is nearly identical to SB 266 from last session, dealing with disallowed compensation impacting a retiree's final compensation amount. And then Senator Portantino has introduced SB 457 that would require CalPERS and CalSTRS to provide school districts and contracting agencies an option to elect an investment portfolio that does not contain investment vehicles that are issued or owned by the government of the Republic of Turkey. So this is kind of a novel idea to do something other than divestment. Now, there's no need to try to remember all these numbers. We will continue to monitor all the bills, and next month we will be providing you with a complete list and can talk about some of these in more detail if necessary. With that, I will move to the federal update. And I would like to touch on two things before turning over to the K&L Gates team. First, I wanted to make you and the audience aware that we have sent out 6 comment letters since our last meeting in November. Most of them are now on our external website. 3 of those letters went to the SEC, one supporting the timely completion of the consolidated audit trail to enhance data security, one expressing concern with the weakening of audit standards at the PCAOB, and then the last one in support of NASDAQ's rulemaking to adopt listing rules related to board diversity. 2 letters went to the Sustainable Accounting Standards Board to comment on their work on global sustainable standards and their framework on human capital management. And then the last letter went to the International Financing Reporting Standards Foundation to comment on their consultation paper on sustainable reporting. The last thing I wanted to briefly touch on was our federal priorities that have been shared with you. I won't go into a lot of detail, but I think you will see that many of them are issues that we have a long history of working on. The investment area, we will continue to focus on items that promote efficient and sustainable capital markets in order to create the long-term value and returns we need to meet for our pension obligations. Under the healthcare area, we will concentrate on those areas that improve healthcare quality, access, and affordability for our members. And finally, in the retirement area, it is about protecting defined benefit plans and promoting retirement security for all. With that, I will turn it over to Dan Crowley and his team, and they will give you a sense of what we can expect in the next year and where we can make progress on the issues that are important to CalPERS.
Danny, thank you. Mr. President, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm joined by 2 of my colleagues in Washington, D.C., Karishma Page and Bill Kirk, and I will be brief and turn things over to them. I'm just going to give a very quick overview of where things stand and then ask Karishma to give you an update on COVID relief legislation, where all that stands, particularly with respect to state and local funding, and then ask Bill to share some of his insights on ways to engage with Congress in this new political environment. And that's a good place to start, because the world changed fundamentally, not on election day, but on January 6th, when the 2 Georgia Senate runoff races went to the Democrats, creating unified Democratic control of Congress. And it's important to remember that the last time that we had unified Democratic control, in the period 2008 to 2010, CalPERS was extremely effective in providing input on what became Title VII of Dodd-Frank, and then subsequently in the implementing regulations. And so I think it's clear that it is an opportunity to advance the CalPERS agenda over the near term. But it's also important to remember that our goal always is to be able to appeal to a majority of policymakers, not necessarily the majority. And that's important to keep in mind, because the political pendulum will continue to swing. And there is a very realistic possibility that Kevin McCarthy, the current Republican leader from California, could become speaker within about 22 months. And so it's important to not to be nonpartisan, but rather to be vigorously bipartisan and to continue to engage with both sides as we move forward. Personnel is policy, and we see from the Biden appointments to date and the ones that we expect a very clear set of legacy issues that Bill can address, but they center first and foremost on climate change and racial and social equity. And we can talk a little bit more about those and how they dovetail with CalPERS agenda. Obviously, sustainability, ESG disclosures are now at the fore. A number of the people who have been appointed throughout the administration are leaders in this area, whether they come from asset managers or other areas like the TCFD. But it's very clear that once Gary Gensler is confirmed as chairman of the SEC, that there is going to be a flurry of activity in that area. And an opportunity to advance the CalPERS agenda, not only on sustainability, but also things like human capital. And so we're excited about this particular moment we find ourselves in. I do think it's worth noting that already we've been asked to provide input, and that James Andrus will be testifying before the House Financial Services Committee next week on sustainability, political disclosures, and things like that. So we're in the midst of helping him prepare for that. I'm going to stop there in the interest of time and turn it over to Karishma and Bill, who can talk to you about what's currently going on and where we're headed from here. But we'd be happy to take any questions at the end.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you to the board to be able to be with you this afternoon. Dan's comments are a great place to start. The current thinking of the White House and congressional Democrats is go big and go fast. To Dan's point, there's 22 months before the next election, and the midterms are often a time where there is a dynamic that plays against the party of the president. So with that knowledge, and with that knowledge that we are at a really critical moment in terms of the pandemic, in terms of our nation's health, and in terms of the nation's economy, the Democrats are really focused on moving as quickly as possible. We view that as a two-part process. We see it as a two-part process. There's an immediate focus on what's being termed relief, and shortly thereafter, a focus on what is being termed recovery. So with the relief package, Democrats are moving ahead quickly with what is being termed the American Rescue Package. This was the $1.9 trillion package that was announced by President Biden the day after he was inaugurated on January 21st. And that was then effectuated into what we're now seeing as legislation that's moving very quickly through the House and Senate. There was some work done in those days after the inauguration about whether a new recovery package could be a bipartisan effort. And there was some thinking that there was just such a delta between congressional Republicans and the White House and the Democrats that the Democrats really needed to move ahead. They're employing a process called reconciliation by which the Senate moves with a simple majority. So the 51st vote being the vote that is provided by Vice President Harris. So in that regard, a reconciliation package moves very quickly on the one hand. On the other hand, there are processes that are involved in it, and there are restrictions of what can be included. So the first process-related issue is that the House and Senate need to enact or need to pass a budget resolution that includes reconciliation instructions. So just to give a sense of the timeline, Congress very quickly, first on February 3rd, the House passed that resolution. The Senate engaged in what's called a vote-a-rama, which allows any member to bring a vote to the floor. And after several hours of debate that went through the night, the Senate passed that resolution as well. Now that provided the instructions for the committees to move forward with their substantive recommendations. And just over the course of the last week, several House committees marked up and passed the reconciliation measure. The House Budget Committee this week is working on putting that all together. We expect that it's supposed to be on the floor next week, but it's quite possible that the House could stay in over the weekend and transmit to the Senate shortly thereafter. Why the rush? The rush certainly is a reflection of the focus on the health and economy as a result of the pandemic, but also that a number of programs that were enacted as part of the relief packages last year are coming to expire in the middle of March. So with that, provide a few high-level thoughts in terms of what is included in that package. There are $350 billion that are allocated for states, localities, and tribes. An additional economic stimulus payment to individuals of $1,400, unemployment benefits, also additionally safety net programs and consideration of child and family tax credits, dollars for schools, and some level of relief from a housing and renters perspective, $60 billion for vaccination testing and distribution. And currently the package does include a raising of the minimum wage to $15. It's a gradual increase through 2025. We expect that there will be some changes to the package on the Senate side. Most critically, it's the Senate that does what's called a bird bath, which is to ensure that all of the provisions of that package are consistent with the requirement that a reconciliation package only include provisions that touch the budget and that do not have a cost over a 10-year budget window. So that's going to occur on the Senate side. And so query whether things like the $15 minimum wage will get through that process. But also we have seen some indications from some of the moderates that they'd like to see some changes to the package. Once that is complete, or even earlier than that, we're already starting to see what will be that next tranche, the recovery package, which was likely to focus on Dan's mention of climate change and sustainability. We'll see infrastructure, transportation, certainly energy, the new energy future type provisions, and climate measures. And so that we do anticipate is another broad-based package. Again, the attempt will be to be bipartisan at first, and if there is no path forward there, then the Democrats will move ahead quickly, also likely through a reconciliation package. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bill, and of course, happy to take any questions after Bill's presentation.
Good morning or good afternoon here in Washington. It's a snowy, cold day here in DC. I want to just briefly talk about a couple of high-level things that emphasize what both Dan and Karishma have said. And maybe the best way to start is this morning I had the opportunity to be on a small call with the Majority Whip, Mr. Clyburn. And one of the things he talked about was emphasized, as Karishma said, the importance of moving quickly to deal with what he called the rescue plan, as she correctly termed it. It's not the initial legislation Congress is looking at least the Democrats in the House and the White House, I believe in the Senate too, are looking at this as immediate rescue. As he put it, it's not a question of whether or not the package should be 1.3 trillion or 1.9 trillion. It's what the need is. And so, as Karishma has pointed out, the Democratic majority in both bodies and in the Senate and in the White House have decided those categories that should be included in the need category, and that's how they get to the 1.9 trillion. We saw that the president went out to Wisconsin to try to sell this plan. It appears that at least some of the polling shows that a majority of the American public believes that there needs to be this go big approach. The second thing that he said that's instructive for this conversation is he said that the watchword for how the Democratic majority in the White House are going to be looking at this is they use 3 E's. Is it effective? Is it equitable? And how efficient it is. And so those are the bywords that they are looking at. And in fact, the House Democrats have set up a special select committee to oversee how these funds are going to be used. Whip Clyburn emphasized an issue that I know is very important to the CalPERS community, which is the fact that we need to have investment. We need to have aid go to state and local governments. And so that's a commitment that they have. The next high level thing that I like to talk about is just taking a look at the composition of the Congress these days. You have a record number of women who were elected to the House of Representatives. You have new voices that are in the Senate with Dan alluded to the 2 new senators from Georgia. So you see that there is a tremendous amount of diversity that is being reflected. There's a generational split that is also there. You have a group of younger members, but you have a group of more seasoned members. And all of that is going to come to play into how policy is going to be looked at from going forward. I would also point out that the majority, as Dan was alluding to, that the majorities of the Democrats are very, very narrow. And so that either that lends itself to the notion that there are going to be efforts to try to find from time to time some compromise on some items. This particular package that we're talking about, they've opted to go reconciliation because there's a desire that they want to have a big package. And so they're using this reconciliation package. But on some of the other items that we expect to see, the fact that the majorities in both the House and the Senate are so so narrow is going to suggest that there are going to be discussions about compromise. Taking a look at the Senate, there's a group of about 4 or 5, maybe 6 senators that are kind of swing senators. And you see that Senator Manchin from West Virginia, you see Senator Kelly from Arizona, Senator Sinema from Arizona, and several others. They seem to be like comprising a swing group. So at a high level, I would also say that diversity and equity is going to inform a lot of the decision-making that folks are making. The Democratic caucus in the House has included that as a touchstone for all the policies that they're going to be looking at. There's a belief, and I think it's been demonstrated, that there are communities that have been left behind, that have not been well served. And so this Congress, at least the majority and the president, seem to be focused on making sure that all the policies that they roll out actually have equity and as part of the equation in terms of how they evaluate what they are going to be doing. I'm going to stop there. I'd be happy to take any questions. I just want to give you a sense of high level what we see. We're by the way, we are tracking a lot of the appointments that are going on in the administration, so that we are very much aware of the officials that are beginning to populate some of those positions, particularly those that are particularly important to CalPERS as an investor. But let me stop there, and I'm happy to take any question about the high-level politics as we see it. Right.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Mr. Brown and K&L Gates, Mr. Crowley, Ms. Page, Mr. Kirk for the fulsome report. I feel like I was watching the news here for a minute. But I really appreciate all of the dipping into the nuances. I think my question is actually for Ms. Page. You mentioned the bird bath part. Okay, so what are how much will that slow this package down? And then secondarily, what do you think will get taken out? The $15 an hour? What do you think will get taken out in the Senate at the bird bath?
Yeah, Ms. Taylor, it's a very good question. My sense is that the parliamentarian on the Senate side is already working. That they have been taking pieces of this package as it's been coming through. One of the things that's been very interesting for those of us that are trying to intersect the bill right now is there's really been a cap and a limitation in terms of what changes were made through the committee process all the way through. The Budget Committee is really not even being allowed to make any changes, but for slight budgetary issues or for technical changes. That to me is a reflection of a couple things. Number one, they're trying to stay tight to that $1.9 trillion number, which is difficult to do. But the second is the issue of they have started that bird bath process already behind the scenes and really trying to ensure that they know where the issues are. So the real strong desire at this point is to be done by that March 14th date on the Senate side. And that's one of the reasons we're seeing that real push to get out of the House right now. It could be the case that, we see a week or two extension if there are challenges that come to the fore once we get over to the Senate side. But my expectation is that a lot of that is already being negotiated. Things in terms of things that drop out, I think we're already sort of seeing where some of those bounds are. Folks have been messaging. That's partially a bird bath issue. It's partially an issue of just politics. To Bill's very good point, there are a group of moderate Democrats that have been messaging where they stand on $15. That's also a really important question from a parliamentarian perspective about whether it does meet the bird bath rules. So our expectation is, I think all eyes really are on that $15 minimum wage as sort of the key aspect of what's in question. But then there may be some other minor aspects of the bill that could drop out for either the bird bath reason, for budgetary reasons more generally, not meeting what was required under the reconciliation bill, or to get that 50-person majority in the Senate.
Great, and thank you. And then Mr. Kirk, I just wanted to thank you very much for talking about the equity inclusion that this administration is working on so hard throughout the government and some of the policies that they're trying to get through. But go ahead, you were also saying something.
No, I was just going to give you an example, not to get too much into the weeds on this. First, on the $15, Karishma and I happened to be on a call last week with the staff director of the House Democratic Caucus. And he indicated that there is a big desire to go ahead and get that $15, both on the substantive and also on the political level. Is that they want to be able to deliver, to say that that this Congress has delivered that. Whether they'll be able to get that, as Karishma said, it's going to be a significant challenge because of the procedural rules, what we refer to as the Byrd Rule. Second, again, not getting too much far in the weeds, there is a lot of back and forth that is already going on between the authorizing committees, the appropriations committees on both House and Senate. They are, in a sense, pre-conferencing, so they're trying to come up with the same package. So to emphasize that they can try to meet that deadline of March the 14th. In fact, we expect that next week the House will put its version of this reconciliation recovery bill on the floor for debate and action, and then it'll go over to the Senate. So I just wanted to give you that kind of level of detail, if that might be helpful to you, right?
Thank you very much. That's quick, actually. Thank you.
Ms. Knowlton?
Thank you, Mr. President. And I simply want to thank Mr. Crowley, Ms. Page, Mr. Kirk for their work, for their excellent report, and emphasize again how important it is for state and local government that there is aid that comes to us from the rescue package. This has been held up in the past administration. The issues of public finance for state and local government are real and significant, and this aid is incredibly important. I know that CalPERS has been active in supporting the efforts for this aid, and I compliment my colleagues on the board for that work.
Thank you, Ms. Knowlton. Yeah, also I'll echo my colleagues' comments. Thank you, Mr. Crowley, Ms. Page, and Mr. Kirk, on your staying on top of these issues and bringing that information to the board. Are you using, Ms. Taylor mentioned the bird bath. Is that term interchangeable with the reconciliation issue, or are those two different processes?
They are part of the same process. So the reconciliation process is sort of the broader term for the procedural, overall procedure that falls under a budget resolution that does allow for this expedited consideration. One requirement within reconciliation is for there to be a budgetary impact of various provisions, and that is processed through that's characterized as the Byrd Rule. And that's sort of where the term bird bath comes from.
And so given that understanding from a broad perspective, what are some of the major items that may not make it through the reconciliation process?
Yeah, it's a good question, President Jones. And I think I come back to the main issue really being one of the $15 minimum wage. We've seen arguments both ways about how that does fit under the reconciliation, how that does meet the Byrd Rule and how it doesn't. And the simple analysis has been for many years that and when we look at budgetary impacts, it's sort of a first order look at the impact on the economy generally. So if we're looking at just the fact that we're increasing the minimum wage, then there would be a strong argument there that it does not meet the Byrd Rule requirements. Now, there are arguments to be made that then, we're talking about tax revenues that adjust. We're talking about other impacts through various payroll taxes. And so as a result, if you look at sort of the impact that way, there are arguments to be made that it could meet the Byrd Rule requirements.
Okay.
President Jones, this is Bill Kirk. There's another layer to this, and it has to do with to what extent is what Congress is doing providing discretion to the agency? Under this reconciliation process, it is generally deemed to be inappropriate to pass sections that provide a lot of discretion in terms of the interpretation of what Congress intends. So it's got to be more mandatory, if you will. And so there are provisions where the authorizing committees would like to provide either direction or discretion to an agency in terms of how they implement things. And sometimes that gets you also into bird rule concerns. Karishma is absolutely correct, but the other layer is how much is this is a mandatory direction versus how much of the particular provision engages or involves discretionary action on the part of the agency.
Okay, thank you. I see no additional questions from board members, so we do have a member of the public that requested to speak on this item. So Mr. Fox, can you check on that for us, please?
Yes, Mr. President, we have one caller from the California State Retirees, Mr. Tim Behrens.
Barron.
Jones, members of the board. Good morning, President Jones, member of the board. My question's for Danny, and it's what is the current status of the retired annuitant language? Did the governor push the last year's no mandate on annuitants over to 2021, or is it starting all over again?
I'm not know if I understand the question exactly, but as far as legislative working after retirement, we have been working with some of our stakeholders on developing some language that I believe will get introduced sometime this year by Senator Cortese. So that's kind of the status of the legislation. The legislation that was introduced last year did not go forward. It died in the Senate PERS committee. So we are working on legislation for this session. The governor has, I believe the governor still has his executive orders out there that deal with retired annuitants who are working specifically on issues surrounding the pandemic. But again, that doesn't necessarily cover all of the work, all of the retired annuitants. So I don't know if that answered your question. If not, I'm happy for a follow-up question or a conversation.
No, that answers my question. If you could send me the difference between the required workers that the governor is covering for unlimited hours and the ones that aren't, so I could publish that so people will know.
Sure, I'll work with our program area on that and make sure we get the accurate information over to you.
Thank you, Danny.
Okay, Mr. Perez, did you have a follow-up question?
Danny, can you give that to the board too, please, so we can let our members know as well?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no, Mr. Fox, are there any additional public members requesting to speak?
No, Mr. President, that concludes public comment for today.
Okay, well, then thank you again, Danny and Dan and Karishma and Bill for your report. We will now move on to the next item on the agenda is summary of board direction. Ms. Frost.
Thank you, President Jones. The only item that I noted was the one that we just discussed, the request from Mr. Tim Behrens as well as from Mr. Perez about sending the working after retirement language, both on the legislative side and the executive order, and the difference between current law and what the executive order provides to a certain set of retirees.
Okay. All righty. I see no other questions, comments there. So we go to the last item on the agenda, public comment. Mr. Fox, are there any members of the public who wish to comment at this time?
Mr. President, there are no callers at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fox. So we are adjourned now into closed session for items 1 through 3 from the closed session agenda. This will include the following litigation matter: Wedding et al. v. CalPERS. We'll also receive the General Counsel's update on pending litigation. So at this time, the board members will exit this open session meeting and connect to the closed session meeting. To the members of the public watching on the live stream, this concludes our open session meeting for February. Thank you for joining us, and we'll allow our board members 15 minutes to disconnect and reconnect and account for 2 minutes.